right. Is that too loud? Loud enough? Loud enough, okay. All right, so that was an excellent introduction to the beaded lizard families, the Gila monsters and the beaded lizards. So we are extremely lucky to be here in the Sonoran Desert today, because here in the Sonoran Desert, not only do we have both of the medically significant venomous lizards in the world, but we also have over half of all the rattlesnake species alive on planet Earth today. Right here in this desert. Isn't that exciting? No? Okay. All right. Well, anyways, as far as the United States is concerned, all of you that are visiting from out of state today, I want to welcome you to the rattlesnake capital of the United States. There are between 13 and 18 true species of rattlesnakes in Arizona, depending on which scientist you ask, and there is as many as 22 subspecies of rattlesnake. If you need more rattlesnake in your life than Arizona can offer you, you have to go south into Sonora, Mexico, where there is about 30 different subspecies of rattlesnake. So it's a great place to be if you're into rattlesnakes and venomous creatures. But without further ado, I think our friend is itching to come out and see y'all. Would you know what that was if I hadn't told you already? How would you have known what this thing was? Yes, it makes that unmistakable, whoa! He's a firecracker today. But yeah, that noise, no other snakes in the world have that noise maker on their back end like that. The rattlesnakes are the only ones that have that ability. And of all of the 40 or so species of rattlesnake, there are only about 5 that don't have a rattle that works. And those all live on little tiny islands out in the middle of the ocean. So wherever you are, usually your rattlesnakes will have a rattle unless something traumatic has happened in their life. So why do those snakes have that rattle? That rattle is an excellent evolutionary tool, and that was developed because these snakes are really good at one thing, and that one thing is camouflage. That is actually the rattlesnake's #1 defense, is never to be seen. And they're really, really good at not being seen. Wherever they are, they blend into their environment really well. And so way back in the early days of rattlesnake evolution, they had a problem. And this problem was there was a lot of big, clumsy mammals walking around, and they were getting stepped on. So they needed a way to tell these big mammals, hey, don't step here, because if you step here, you and I are both going to have a really bad day. I'm going to bite you, I'm going to get squished, or I'm going to bite you. Nobody's going to be happy. So the rattlesnakes developed that rattle in order to communicate with those big mammals. So that's a pretty cool adaptation. So the rattle is made of keratin, which is the same material as your fingernails and hair. So you got that in common with the rattlesnake. And it is completely hollow. There are no rocks in there. There are no, like little marbles or anything. It is completely hollow, and it just works because the segments bounce off of each other. And at the end of the show, if you want to see a cross-section of a rattle, we have one over there that we can show you. But yes, every time this rattlesnake sheds its skin, a new button comes up from the bottom there, and those are what bounce off of each other to make that unmistakable noise. The rattlesnake, you can't tell the age of the rattlesnake by counting the number of buttons on its tail, because they can shed as many as 3 to 8 times in a year, depending on how little or big they are. So this being an adult Hopi rattlesnake, can shed as many as 3 or 4 times in a year, so it'll add 3 to 4 buttons on that tail, and it'll also lose buttons off of the tail periodically because it being made of keratin, they get brittle, they break off, and so you can't actually tell how old a rattlesnake is unless you were there on the day it was born. And yes, rattlesnakes are born alive; they do not lay eggs. So anybody that was planning on buying those rattlesnake eggs or whatever that you can get at the airport, that doesn't exist. So yeah, the rattle is a pretty cool adaptation, and it's a great way for the snake to communicate its innermost thoughts and feelings. But enough about the rattle. Let's talk business end of the snake. So we'll see if our friend here is willing to sit still for a moment, and it doesn't look like that's going to happen. But anyways, you can see that the tongue, it's flicking that tongue as it's moving around, and that tongue is doing the same thing as the Gila monster. It is the sense of smell, and the snakes also have an excellent sense of smell. That's one of their best senses. That's the one that they rely on the most. So the snake has, it's got its eyes there, and those eyes are actually really good at vision. We think rattlesnakes have excellent vision because they raise their bodies up like that to see what's going on. They will crawl up on top of rocks to see what's happening in their world. So we think that they have really, really good eyesight. You take it easy there. So we think their eyesight's good. Rattlesnakes cannot hear airborne noises. This is a fun fact because they use an airborne noise to communicate with other organisms, but they cannot hear themselves rattle. If you ever see a rattlesnake out on the path as you're walking around out here in Arizona, if you yell at it, you're like, hey, rattlesnake, get out of my way, blah, 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 you know, whatever you do, you're wasting your breath because it can't hear you, it's not listening. And so a better thing to do would be to stomp your feet, because to make up for the fact that they have no ears, the rattlesnake's lung, it has one lung that occupies the first third of its body, and that lung acts as a resonation chamber and amplifies vibrations in the ground. Now, that vibration, it can feel a little mouse coming from 3 to 5 meters away. So that's pretty good. And so just imagine how far away it can feel a human coming from. That's one reason you don't see a lot of rattlesnakes while you're out there walking around, is because they feel us coming. And they're like, I don't know what that giant thing coming is, but I don't want to deal with it. So they run away and they go hide in the bushes, because a fun little secret that rattlesnakes don't want you to know is they're kind of chicken. They don't want to deal with big, scary animals. They're more afraid of us than we are of them. So they run off in the bushes and they hide, and then as you walk by, they will be completely silent. Because as a rattlesnake, you need to be very judicious about when you use your rattle, because if you use it at the wrong time, it could cost you. So let's put ourselves in the mind of this rattlesnake real quick, all right? Everybody thinking like a snake? So if a pack rat is bouncing down the trail as you, here comes the little pack rat, are you going to rattle at the pack rat? Just raise your hand if you would rattle at the pack rat. All right, nobody's going to rattle at the pack rat. Good answer. Everybody got dinner today. You're all very happy snakes. Now, here comes a bobcat walking down the trail, the same one that just dealt with Mr. Gila monster there. And it's walking down the trail, and it hasn't seen you. You don't think it's seen you anyway, because it's kind of grumbly, because it's got a sore face, because it got bit by a Gila monster or whatever. And it's walking down the trail, and it's, you know, I'm still hungry, I wish I had something to eat, blah, blah, blah. You're sitting over there as the rattlesnake. Who's going to rattle at the bobcat? I got, you know, a dozen or so people that raise their hand for that. You dozen or so people who raised your hand are probably dead. Yeah, if you rattle at something that could eat you, you have just rang the dinner bell. You have outed yourself, and you have exposed yourself to a predator. That will probably end poorly for you, because, you know, you don't want to announce yourself to something that might eat you. Now, a third scenario, here comes a human, you know, a big clumsy human walking down the trail, minding its own business, and it's getting a little close, but you're not really sure if it's going to do anything. Who's going to rattle at the human? I got a lot more hands for the human, and that's a trick question. That's totally on you as a rattlesnake. If you think the human is going to be a threat to you, go ahead and let it know that you're there. But if you think that that human hasn't seen you and it's not a threat, just remain quiet, and odds are that human will never even know you're there. If it was a little warmer out today and it wasn't rainy, we have several resident rattlesnakes here on the grounds at the Desert Museum, and many, many people visit, and most people just walk by the rattlesnakes and never even know that they're there, because they sit quietly and just watch the people go on by. But anyways, there's another sense that the rattlesnake has that is very, very cool and is characteristic of the rattlesnake's pit viper family. Ooh, how was that? So you see that hole in the face there, just below the eye? That's the loreal pit, or the heat sensing pit. And that allows the snake to pick up infrared radiation. It can see infrared radiation. And the infrared radiation is just body heat, or heat in the environment. So that pit allows, and we say see infrared radiation because it's connected to the same part of the brain as the eye. So when that snake is looking around, it can see an interesting thing. So it uses its tongue to find where the rodents like to run. It sits next to the rodent trail and it waits until it feels a little pitter-patter of mousy feet coming down the trail. Then all of a sudden it sees something that looks like that out of those l'Oreal pits. So, who still has their rattlesnake brain on? Who wants to tell me what's happening up here? Anybody? Go ahead. Yeah, which one's the animal? That. Good answer. Which one? What color is the animal? Yellow. You're right. What did I ever do to you? The yellow is the rat. It's sitting on the orange thing. What do you think the orange thing is?
It's a mouse.
A rock? Very good. And what do you think the blue stuff around the rock is? Grass. Yeah, so this is a mouse sitting on a rock in the middle of some grass. So you can see that while the mouse thinks that it's pretty cool and camouflaged with that grass, it's really not. It might as well be wearing a neon sign on its neck, announcing its presence, because that snake can see its body heat. And this is one reason you don't see a lot of rattlesnakes out in the middle of the day during June, because the mouse is about the same temperature as the ground in the middle of June. So rattlesnakes tend to come out more at night when it's hotter, because they need to see their food. And it's hard to see when it's the same color as the ground. So anyway, that's the really cool adaptation. And so anyways, the rattlesnake is sitting there. That pack rat is bouncing around again, and it sees it. It's coming through the grass. That pack rat gets into 1/2 to 2/3 the length of the snake away. 1/2 to 2/3 the length of a snake is a very important number to remember, because that is the strike distance. A snake cannot strike with 100% of its body length, and that is a good thing, right? Because we don't want any snakes going all missile launcher at us. That would be kind of scary. But they always have to keep the last third of their body planted on the ground as a point to return back to. So however long the snake is, you say, okay, I'll give it a 2/3 of its body length, and I'll stay just a little bit further away from it than that, and you are safe. Here in Arizona, our biggest snakes are about 5 foot long, the western diamondbacks. And so if you stay 5 feet away from any snake in Arizona, you are safe. If you stay 10 feet away from any snake in Arizona, you are doubly safe. So we recommend at least 5, but, kind of lean towards 10 feet. You've got really good zooms on these cameras these days, so you can get those good pictures from far, far away. So anyways, yeah, you get that mouse that comes into that 1/2 to 2/3 strike range. That's when that snake delivers the bite. It'll lunge out, opens its mouth, unfurls those fangs, hits that target, works that venom in, pulls the fangs out, and returns back to a resting position. And all of that happens in about 1/10 of 1 second. These are one of the fastest striking snakes in the world. And when they go out, they bite, they envenomate, they let go. That mouse is then going to run as far and as fast as it can in the next 30 to 60 seconds before it's done for. So after the mouse, the snake gives the mouse a little bit of a head start, and then it starts using that sense of smell to find where the mouse's final resting place is. And when the snake comes up on the mouse's, body, it's got a nice warm meal there ready. And then that's when its third ear bone comes into play, because the third ear bone has moved down into the bottom jaw. So the bottom jaw sits something like this. The third ear bone allows the jaw to drop down like that. And then the chin is not fused together, so the chin can spread really wide apart. And then the bottom jaw work kind of like hands to pull the food down into the belly. So with all of those adaptations in the skull, a snake can swallow something 5 times the diameter of its own head. So this little Hopi rattlesnake here on the table can eat probably a medium-sized pack rat without any issue at all. And if it did that, it wouldn't have to eat again for a little while. So anyways, while we're on the topic of venom though, let's talk about that thing that you all came to hear about, that people and rattlesnake aspect. So every year in the state of Arizona, there are 400 rattlesnake bites to people. Sounds like a lot, but if you think of the number of people that live in this state and the number of people that visit this state, and roll that up with the number of rattlesnakes that live in this state, 400 bites is not a whole heck of a lot. Now, of the 400 bites, you can break them up into 2 categories. The first 100 bites are what we like to call accidents. Now, this is the one that everybody's scared of. This is the one where like, oh my gosh, I'm way out on my favorite hiking trail, and there's a snake in the middle of the path, and I step on it and it bites me. Well, that is very rare. The accidents are super uncommon. Most snake bites actually in general happen about 500 feet away from your home, where you have that false sense of security. So very, very uncommon to be bitten by a rattlesnake way out on your favorite trail. But anyways, these accidental bites, they're pretty easy to avoid as long as you follow some of the golden rules of Arizona. Those being, always watch where you put your hands, your feet, and your seat. Because if you know where your body is in space, you can see the rattlesnake and you can avoid it. All right? So don't ever stick your hand blindly into any holes. Don't ever put your feet anywhere where you haven't looked first. And never sit on anything that you haven't checked under, because a bite on the bum is not a good thing. And another good rule to live by is, if you ever think you're going to be outside after dark, carry your flashlight, because the snakes do like to come out after dark, and so you need to see them. So always carry your flashlights when you're out after dark. So as long as you do those two things and use a little bit of common sense, the odds of you getting bit by a rattlesnake are very, very low. All right, so we covered a quarter of all the bites, but we still have 3/4 of all the bites that happen in Arizona that we haven't talked about yet. And if there's only 2 categories, and we've already talked about the accidents, what is the other category?
Trying to pick one up.
All right, stupidity. We'll roll with that. We'll actually take the tip off that really sharp word, and we'll use a very politically correct: people who have made poor life decisions. How's that sound? So yeah, the majority of these rattlesnake bites happen because, yes, people see the rattlesnake, they say, hey, look, that's a rattlesnake, and they choose to interact with it anyways. Yes, some people do pick it up, you're right, and that happens. Some people, they have, Renee said you take pictures like this nowadays. They push that, that safe limit, and the snake reaches out and tags them on the hand. And a lot of these snake bites, these illegitimate snake bites, happen when people see the rattlesnake and they say, that is a rattlesnake. I don't know why, but I feel like I should kill that animal. So they get out their stick or their shovel or whatever, and they proceed to beat on the animal, at which point I feel the animal, whatever it does to that person, they've deserved. Because if someone hit me with a shovel, you're darn right I would bite them too. So yeah, as long as you leave the snake alone, a lot of these bites could be avoided. Well, interestingly enough, there's a very specific demographic of person that tends to get bit most often by rattlesnakes. This always hurts me to say. So this person is usually male, yes. Because you remember a minute ago where I said use a little bit of common sense and you'll be completely fine around snakes? We'll ask any female in the audience and they will tell you that males do not possess common sense. Anyway, there's a second characteristic of the most likely to be bitten by a rattlesnake is the male that's between the ages of 18 and roughly 40 years old. The time in a man's life where the testosterone levels are the highest, but the brain function is the lowest. You've all been there? And there's a third characteristic that a lot of these, illegitimate rattlesnake bites share, and you'll never guess what it is, I bet. Alcohol, yes. Young, intoxicated males plus snakes equals disaster. So if it wasn't for these young, drunk males, we would have about 100 snake bites in Arizona every year. And that would be pretty cool, because then people wouldn't be as afraid of them. But these young, intoxicated males are off doing, questionable things, and they're really pushing our numbers up every year. So anyways, so let's go through a little scenario, okay? So here we are. We're all gathered here in beautiful Tucson, Arizona, where rattlesnake season starts on January 1st and ends on December 31st. And we're at a backyard barbecue. We're all hanging out. We have our friends and our family, and from the corner of the yard, we hear that unmistakable rattlesnake noise, and someone yells snake, and at that point, part of the party runs that way, and part of the party comes to see the snake. You're there today. You're telling all the people the fun facts that you've learned about these animals here at the Desert Museum today, and you're all admiring. You're staying in that safe 5 foot away distance, and You're standing there and you're admiring the snake. Well, today at the party, we have that one friend or family member. You all know the one friend or family member I'm talking about. The one that tends to make the poor life decisions maybe a little bit more frequently than everybody else. So anyways, they're there today, and they've had 1 or 2 drinks, and they've just finished binge watching The Crocodile Hunter on Netflix, okay? So they see the snake and they're like, oh man, I saw this guy on the TV. And so they take their cup of beer and they thrust it forth into your hands and they say those famous last words of most rattlesnake bite victims, which is, dude, hold my beer and watch this. And they go down for the tail of that snake, and before they can even, pretend to grab the snake, it has already bitten them on the hand. Because they were a big giant animal and they were attacking that snake in its mind. So it has bitten our friend on the hand. What do we do now? 911? Should we go to the woodshed and pull out the shovel and start digging our friend's grave? No, yeah, you're right. There's a 95% chance our friend is going to survive even if they don't get any treatment. But if they don't get any treatment, some really terrible things are going to happen to them, and so we are going to take them to the hospital. That is the absolute right answer. Now, excuse me, is there any first aid that we can give to our friend?
Tourniquet.
Excuse me. Tourniquet. I heard tourniquet. That was kind of... For a really long time, tourniquet was the right answer, but nowadays we know that tourniquet is actually the wrong answer. Because tourniquets, so this snake's venom is designed to kill small animals. It's designed to start pre-digesting small animals. So if that snake bites our friend on the hand, okay? Our friend has just been bitten on the hand. And we tie him off at the wrist, all right? What animal is roughly that size? A pack rat, a mouse, yeah, something like that. So a lot of damage is going to happen. Calm down. A lot of damage is going to happen inside of that small area. And so it's actually better to let the venom course throughout the body because your body's natural filtration will take the venom and filter it out of your system. Because this venom is not designed to kill something as large as a human. Okay? So the humans are safe. But if you tie your friends off at the wrist, using the tourniquet or the ice or something, the odds of losing that limb are very, very good. Snake bite was one of the top 3 reasons that people received amputations in the United States for like the last 5 or 6 years running. Tourniqueted snake bites are a bad idea, so don't tourniquet the snake bite. Now, you don't want to go all John Wayne on it. I know old Tucson's down there, and maybe some of you have visited there. Well, John Wayne, whatever he taught you about first aid for snake bite is wrong. You never pull out your knife and cut it open, because snake bite changes your blood chemistry. It takes away your clotting factor, and you will bleed a lot more than you typically would. So you never want to cut yourself open. Right, you never do. And you don't want to try and suck the venom out, because let me pose this in a very silly way. All right, you have just gone to the pharmacy and received your flu shot for the year. A couple seconds later, you say to yourself, I don't think I want the flu shot this year. So you try to suck the vaccine out of your arm. Is that going to work? No. So why would it work on the snake fangs? The snake fangs are sharp, they're going deep, and they're delivering a very thick, viscous fluid into your body. That was pretty cool, wasn't it? You're not going to get any of the venom out by sucking on it. So sucking on it, you're just wasting precious time. So what you want to do is you want to pull out your first aid kit for your snake bite. And I bet you most of you have your snake first aid kit on you right now. I carry mine in my pocket because, I'm staring down the barrel of a loaded snake most of the day. So the correct number is 911. And you say, hello, I have a rattlesnake bite, I'm on my way. And then you get part number 2, which is your car keys. You get into the car and you go quickly and safely to the hospital. Now, if you want a super advanced snake first aid kit, carry one of these. This is a ballpoint pen, or a Sharpie marker works just as well. But if you got bit by a snake or your friend got bit, you would circle the fang marks and you would write what time the bite occurred. And then you would get your happy self to the hospital. Now, On your way to the hospital, you're going to take off anything that could potentially become a tourniquet. So rings, watches, sleeves, if the bite is on the leg, take off the boots, take off the socks, take off the tight cuff pants, anything like that, because you don't want anything forming an accidental tourniquet, because the first thing a snake bite is going to do is going to swell up really, really big. So if you're on your way, you've taken off any of the constrictive things, you head to the hospital, you get to the hospital, you check in, they're going to ask you 2 questions. The first question is, do you have your insurance card? And the second question is, what time did the snake bite occur? Because that is the most important question. Because depending on what time it happened and how fast the venom is tracking, they know how much venom you received and how you are reacting to the venom. And you don't need to know what kind of snake bit you, because it's just not that important. But so you don't have to spend time looking through the field guide or anything like that. So yeah, you go. They're going to take blood from you. They're going to monitor. The reason you circle the fang marks is because you can see the venom spreading from the area it was delivered. And so you're going to go, and they're going to watch you for signs of envenomation. Now, it's not guaranteed that you got envenomated, because a rattlesnake has an option. As soon as it bites you, those venom glands are worked on a voluntary muscle system. And so as soon as it sinks its fangs into you, at that moment, the snake has a decision to make. Do I give this person 0 or up to 100% of my venom? So you should be nice to the snakes if they have to bite you, because you want to give them as less as possible. So anyways, the snake bites you. Odds are you got some venom. There's a 3% chance you got a dry bite, but odds are you got some sort of venom. So once you got they prove that you got venom, they're going to start giving you this stuff. This is Crofab. This is the anti-venom that's on the market. There's a new anti-venom that has just been successfully tested in Mesa, Arizona, and it worked really well. So there are 2 anti-venoms on the market right now, but this is probably the one that they'll start off with, the Crofab. So you show signs of snake bite, and you're going to start receiving this in an IV drip. Now, this is not a very cheap, bottle. This is about between $5,000 and $15,000 worth of bottle in my hand right here. So, very, very expensive. And you're not going to just get one of these and go home. Oh, no. You're going to get 8 to 10 of these right out of the gate. That is your loading dose. And then they're going to keep monitoring you. You're going to be in the intensive care unit, and they're going to start, taking your blood every couple of hours and seeing how the venom is tracking through your system. And every 2.5 to 3 hours, you're going to get 2 to 3 more vials of this stuff. And they're going to keep doing that until all the signs of envenomation go away. The average person gets 15 to 20 vials of antivenom. The very unlucky people we've heard about have received 75 to 100 vials of antivenom. So rattlesnake bite is a physically and financially painful event. So you don't want to play with snakes. Be responsible, because rattlesnakes are actually very good creatures. They are very important for our environment. They eat the rodents just like the Gila monsters do. They also are important seed dispersers, because the rodents that they eat, they pass them through their body. All the seeds in the rodent get planted in a nice little pot of fertilizer, and rattlesnakes have been proven to spread about 950 different species of plant seeds here in the desert Southwest. Also, medically, rattlesnakes are important, because rattlesnakes' venom is being looked at for blood thinners, for painkillers, and also has components in it that are very, very promising and target specific types of cancer cells. So one of these days, a rattlesnake is going to cure cancer, and then they're going to be everybody's favorite animal. Until then, I'll take some questions about them, and hopefully you'll change your mind. All right, what do you think? Go ahead.
Why isn't he jumping all over you?
Why isn't he attacking me?
Yeah.
Because
You're aggravating.
he's comfortable there. He's telling me to stay back. I'm keeping him on the table. I don't want him to fall off the table, because that could hurt him. So I'm keeping him on the table, but really I'm keeping my space. The times that he's thrown those false strikes at me, those were times when I cast a shadow, or I maybe got too close. But if I back off and I go over here and I stand in the corner, he's going to not even worry about me anymore. But yeah, go ahead.
Is there any position that he strikes from that you have to be more worried if he's in a certain position?
Yes.
Or does he strike from any?
they can strike from anywhere, but they get their longest strikes out of the coil. So when the rattlesnake is wrapped up in a little ball, that's when it gets that 2/3 body length strike. When a rattlesnake is stretched out straight, it can still strike on any plane, but it can only throw short side-to-side strikes. So you're never safe. You know, if you don't see a rattlesnake coiled, you're not safe. You want to still respect it. But they can strike you from anywhere. So yeah. And rattlesnakes are not aggressive. They don't attack us or anything else besides the rodents because they only act out of defense. Their last line of defense is to bite something. They don't want to waste their venom on us because they cannot eat us. Their venom is designed to kill things that they want to eat for dinner. So if they just crawled around and bit everything that moved, they wouldn't have any venom left to catch their dinner, and then they would starve to death. So they want to be very careful about what they waste that venom on. Go ahead. What's the fastest they can go? Well, if they get a real good clip and they're slithering through the rocks, they can go about 3 miles an hour, which is the walking speed of an average human being. So it's pretty easy to outrun a rattlesnake. Go ahead, there in the middle. Do you have a question? How many bones? Ooh, you know an exact number? Rattlesnakes are all backbone and rib. They have a ton of bones, and even their skull is made up of a bunch of little tiny bones. It's way more than humans have, that's for sure. And humans have 270 some odd. Yeah, rattlesnakes probably have close to 500 to 1,000 bones if I had to take a guess. Go ahead. Yeah.
So if a rattlesnake bit and used all its venom, how long would it be before it had like full store of venom?
If it used all of its venom, how long would it be before it had its full venom storage back? Well, venom, like Renee said, is modified saliva, so the venom would start reproducing right away. Most rattlesnakes can completely restock their venom, and depending on the size of the venom gland, between 3 days to a week and a half. But once they bite and they give you everything, it'll be a few hours before they have a little bit left that they can give again. All right, in the front here. Does it run out? Nope, it's constantly being reproduced. Yep, so the snakes always have a little bit of venom left to give you. All right.
You said the babies were born live. Who takes care of the babies, or can they kill instantly?
Mom rattlesnake is a really good mom. She stays with the babies for the first 2 weeks of their life and guards them because they're very tiny and vulnerable. They don't have a functional rattle. They only have one button, so they have to shed their skin twice before they can make any noise. But mom stays with them for their first shed, and then they're off on their own. They are venomous right out of the chute there, and they are able to control their venom. They are not more dangerous as babies than they are as adults, because the dangerous part of a rattlesnake bite is the amount of venom you receive. So if a baby rattlesnake bites you, you are going to get a lot less venom, even if it gives you everything it has. So if you had to choose from an adult of a species or a baby of a species, you should always choose the baby to get bitten by, because the babies can give you a lot less venom, and the adult can give you a more serious bite. So yeah, the babies are able to hunt right away. But yeah, they're pretty good moms though.